Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:07 and we're plowing through this Monday morning's news cycle like a transgender athlete defeating all of the women in his wake on his way to the championship podium. That's how good we are, or what an advantage we have over the rest. Either way, at 7:35, Maryland Delegate Matt Morgan will join us, tell you what the Democrats are trying to throw in at the last second here on the final day of the legislature in Annapolis. 8:05, Katie Gorka, chairman of the Republican Party in Fairfax. And then at 8:35, Steve Moore, heritage economist, on the tariffs and what Trump might do. Is he going to pause them based on the weekend market fallout, based on what happened in China this morning or overnight? We'll see. It's Larry O'Connor right here, and that's Julie Gunlock right there. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Joe diGenova is so good. He's our legal analyst here. He's a former U.S. attorney of the District of Columbia. He is often referred to as the Alex Ovechkin of D.C. lawyers. The greatest of all time. Here he is, the GOAT, Joe diGenova. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. I have a fantastic slap shot.
Yeah, you do. Oh, there are many toothless lawyers in this town can attest to that.
I use it in close quarters with really bad lawyers.
Did you see that? Honestly, I mean, I get emotional over sports, but that was such a great thing.
I made sure I was watching every second of it. It was spectacular.
Is there anyone classier than Wayne Gretzky, by the way? My gosh,
no,
what a guy.
That's what can be great about sports is the way people in sports conduct themselves, which is exactly why certain professional athletes who don't comport themselves that way deserve a program because they are role models, whether they like it or not, no matter how many millions they're being paid. They have a role to play in society, and that's to reestablish civility.
Well said. Yeah, and I had mixed feelings when Gretzky won it because I grew up in Detroit, and Gordie Howe was our guy, right? And
Gordie Howe.
Yes. The great. And so, but something struck me when they were showing the flashbacks of Gretzky and everything. I don't think D.C. sports fans realize what a rarity this is because Gretzky scored a ton of his goals with the Oilers, ton of his goals with the L.A. Kings. I had forgotten that he actually broke the record as a New York Ranger of all things. Ovi has been our guy since day one, wearing the same uniform every single goal.
It's interesting that hockey has become so popular a sport because it's so difficult to watch on television. I remember as a young boy watching the NHL on television and listening to Bud Palmer call the games out of New York. Back in those days, what you got were the New York Rangers. That was about it. And it was great, but Bud Palmer was the guy calling the hockey games. So,
and watching it on TV, it's like, you were watching a little black piece of fuzz going on the blurry white ice.
And I remember when the NHL and CBS decided they were going to illuminate the hockey puck in an effort to make it easier to watch on television. I actually liked it. They stopped it. I thought it was a great way to watch hockey, but they knew better, I think.
Something told me you were a hockey guy too, Joe. All right, well, I'm glad we had that little moment. Let's get to some of the things that the left is trying to do in this country. They continue to try to destroy it because they don't care about elections. And one of the most insidious, abusive narratives that we have seen echoed through the mainstream legacy propagandist media this last week has to do with the quote-unquote Maryland father who was erroneously deported to the El Salvadoran prison. Now, one thing is true. He lived in Maryland, and he has fathered a child. Those are two things. And the Trump administration did acknowledge in a court filing that there was an administrative error involved with his deportation. But can you unpack the lies from the truth for us, Joe?
Well, the bottom line is he entered this country illegally, and he remains an illegal immigrant. He is now an illegal immigrant who has been sent to El Salvador. The government conceded that a clerical error made him go to El Salvador. The issue, however, is was he doing other things in the country other than being a member of the famous Venezuelan gang and that is that he is known to be a member of MS-13, according to the government. All of the other things in his record indicate that he was subject to deportation. So the question here is whether or not he received due process in the administrative sense. In other words, everybody talks about everybody in these situations being entitled to due process. Due process doesn't mean a court hearing in front of a federal judge. Right. Due process means notice and hearing. It's two things. You have to be given notice and you have to be given a hearing. That can happen in front of an administrative immigration judge who, while he or she is not a federal judge, they're recognized under the law as providing due process. That's, by the way most people get deported is by due process in front of an immigration judge. And that's all he's entitled to. And he got that. Several years ago, it was determined that he was in the country illegally and that he was a member of MS-13 and that he had lied to get into the country. He claimed that he feared for his life in El Salvador, and the reason was he was a member of a rival gang of one of the gangs in El Salvador.
Right.
So, Joe, this judge has ordered him back to the United States. I don't understand. I mean, what he was illegal. He has been found to be a member of MS-13. Why does the federal judge order him back to the United States? Could he not be released from that jail, allowed to stay in that country? But I'm confused. Is he coming back?
He's
to
actually
again?
in his home. He's in his home country now. So isn't he he's under the jurisdiction of El Salvador?
Are they saying he needs to come back to the United States to yet again go through that due process which he already went through?
The silliness. Yes, the silliness of this order is reflected in its earlier stages when the judge ordered airplanes that were in flight to return to the United States.
Right.
Now, you really have to be self-possessed as a federal judge to think that you can order a plane turned around in midair, notwithstanding all of the safety and security and military questions involved in that. Let's just put all of this aside. I know Judge Boasberg. I've watched him over the years. I watched him give Kevin Kleinsmith a slap on the wrist for lying to the FISA court, which Judge Boasberg used to be the chief judge of. Now, how any chief judge who was of the FISA court could slap someone on the wrist for filing a false affidavit knowingly and willfully to the FISA court to get a warrant against Carter Page is beyond me. What it showed to me at the time, and everything that Judge Boasberg has done since then has shown me, is that he takes sides. It's a sad thing to say about a federal judge. And you can go back and look at all these 256 lawyers and judges signing letters about this and that. Where were those people when people were being charged under Foreign Agents Registration Act for doing absolutely nothing more than Hunter Biden was doing? Where were all of these people when search warrants were being executed in lawyers' offices and their files being searched absolutely unconstitutionally and inappropriate? Not a word, not a whimper out of any of these lawyers. And yet they'll go to their deathbeds for this guy, Boasberg, and the guy he's trying to bring back to the United States. I think that what Julie said earlier, and you, Larry, is this guy's an El Salvadorian citizen. He is in his home country. They will take care of him. Lots of luck getting him back. Even if the United States were to engage in diplomatic negotiations, the president of El Salvador is going to say, no, we've got him, and we're keeping him. Would Judge Boasberg like to order a group of Marines to go in and get him back? That's his next step.
Yeah. Joe, stay with us because there's some more intrigue with regard to this case, including a federal attorney who was in court to advocate on behalf of his client. That would be the United States government and Attorney General Pam Bondi. And instead, he seems to have tanked the case on behalf of the federal government. Shockingly, and not so shockingly, he joined the Department of Justice under the Obama administration. So we're going to get into that intrigue as well with Joe diGenova in just a moment. First, though, it is 7:15 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes first on the 5s.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So the federal attorney, Erez Ruveni, who has been a federal attorney under the Department of Justice for 15 years. That means 2010. That means Barack Obama and Eric Holder. Erez Reveni was advocating on behalf of the federal government in court with regard to this so-called Maryland father who has been deported as a suspected member of MS-13. The Attorney General sent a memo specifically saying at the beginning of her tenure as Attorney General to every single federal attorney, you must vigorously advocate on behalf of the United States. Argue in court on behalf of your clients, the United States of America. If you can't do that, then you should leave. Well, this federal attorney in court said to the judge, gee, I wish I had answers to some of these questions, but I don't. I'm frustrated. I don't know. It looks like this guy shouldn't have been deported. Basically arguing on behalf of the defense in this case. And so now this federal attorney has been suspended. But, Joe, this is, again, one of those indications of this rot, this sort of deep state where, you know, regardless of what your political positions might be, if your job is to represent the United States in federal court, your job is to do that. You do your job. Otherwise, you walk out. How many do you think do we have currently working in the Justice Department who are in their own way undermining the agenda of the Attorney General and of the President?
Too many. And in fact, what you saw happen in court is exactly what was intended to happen. The notion that there are career DOJ people, quote unquote, career DOJ, that was supposed to warm your heart as a citizen, to make you think that people were making objective, non-political decisions. In fact, under Obama-Biden, what happened was the federal workforce at the Department of Justice and the FBI became politicized to an incredible degree. Now, they didn't overtly claim that, but when 98% of the employees of the Justice Department are registered in the Democratic Party and give all their campaign contributions to Democrats, what do you think the natural and probable consequence is going to be of that? It's going to be an ideological shift. And what happened in that courtroom the other day was exactly what they teach you when you become a young federal prosecutor, male or female. They say, you advocate on behalf of the United States. I remember when I was interviewing young people to come into the U.S. Attorney's Office in the 1980s, I would ask them if they could prosecute any case, no matter what it was. And I would have some of them say, well, I couldn't prosecute drug cases. And I would say, well, why is that? Because, well, I don't believe it should be illegal. I said, fine, you're not going to be an assistant United States attorney in this office. Thank you very much for your time. The truth is, a lot of people in the Justice Department think that they know better than the American people. They don't like the American people. They don't like the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and they are seeking to undermine his authority. This guy, Ruvani, has been placed on paid administrative leave. So no tears for him. He's getting paid full. And what they're doing is they're trying to figure out what to do with him. His statements in federal court were the statements of someone who does not appear to have had proper legal training. You never say the kinds of things he said in court. What you do is you are trained on how to communicate with the federal court. When you have a bad case, you're taught how to defend it. When you have a good case, you're taught how to sell it. And the bottom line is this: he did none of that, according to the published reports. I wish I'd been there and been able to watch him. It would have been fun to watch him leaving court. People like
Joe,
this
we
do
wish
not
you were there
belong
too.
People do not belong in the civil service who act this way. But this is what's happening in the government now. And it's going to take attention on the part of the Trump people to make sure that these folks are weeded out. But you know what? This started under Obama, the complete destruction of legitimate objectivity in the Justice Department. And it went all the way up. People like Lisa Monaco, who became the Deputy Attorney General, infused the entire process with the Democratic Party hysteria and a kind of viciousness in the enforcement of federal law that never should have gotten there. You know, it is possible to enforce the criminal law with dignity and not be a hack in the process. But Obama made everybody a hack. Everything Obama touched turned to crap, and it included people at the Department of Justice.
Joe, I have nothing but sympathy for Pam Bondi and her entire staff. They are being hit by lawsuits left and right, and it's she said it herself. It's hard to keep up. But I mean, do they need to do more? Do they need to examine who is actually getting these? I mean, I don't even know why this guy was assigned. And I don't know the process by which these lawyers are assigned to these cases, but do they need to clean house in a more rapidly than what they're doing right now?
Well, they started the process by clearing out the public integrity section, which is the one that investigates public corruption by officials and had been used as a weapon against President Trump, citizen Trump, candidate Trump, President-elect Trump, and other public officials. John Edwards, for example, was a great example of one of the most incredible miscarriages of justice ever done. But that was all done by the same people in the public integrity section who eventually were all removed by Donald Trump. What they need to do is they need more people on board that they bring on at the Justice Department. The problem has been White House personnel is holding up all kinds of people. I had a friend who just got a job at the FBI. Everything was held up because of paperwork snafus at the White House. I mean, it's just unbelievable that you can't get this right. And but you have to clean house, and it's really tough. By the way, don't. This is not easy to do when you have a complete bureaucracy that is a member of the other party and whose goal is to subvert your mission. This is the worst that it gets. And what that guy did the other day in federal court, every young lawyer is told how to behave in a situation like that as a young Justice Department lawyer. You are always going to have judges who don't like you, who don't like your president, who don't like your attorney general, who don't like your policies. You are trained on how to turn that against them by being professional and smart and suave and sophisticated in open court, by asking them questions in a professional manner back. He didn't do that, and he didn't do it because he didn't want to be in that courtroom. And since he didn't want to be in that courtroom, he should have told his supervisors, I can't do this. I don't believe in what you're doing. And they should have said, fine, you're fired.
Joe diGenova with a slap shot from the blue line. And once again, he scores. Light the lamp, Joe. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you talking to us.
Go!
It's 7:25 WMAL.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37. Coming up at 8:05, we're going to talk to Katie Gorka, chairwoman of the Republican Party of Fairfax County. And then at 8:35, Steve Moore, heritage economist, talk about those tariffs. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Morning, Julie.
Good morning.
The legislative session is coming to a close in Annapolis, and Marylanders, of course, do need to hang on to their wallets because, boy, oh boy, facing a $3 billion shortfall, which is weird because Virginia didn't have a shortfall. Westmore and his Democrat allies have raised your taxes. They claim there's cuts. I don't see specifics there on those cuts.
Neither does
after
Westmore.
Hiring 5,000 new employees. I want to get to all of that if we can with Matt Morgan, who is a member of the House of Delegates. And Delegate Morgan, we might have to carry over for a second segment because I want to get to this gender ideology instruction initiative now. It's known as HB 161. It started out with the Democrats, Delegate Morgan, as making gender identity and sexual orientation standalone in the K-12 curriculum, removing parents' ability to opt out. We saw Montgomery County do that on their own, but now this would make it statewide. But now the Senate has gone even further. Explain what the Democrats are doing here with regard to very personal, very private sexual orientation that parents would like to have a say in with regard to their children in Maryland schools.
Well, you hit the nail on the head right there. They are just obsessed with sexuality. And I find this a little creepy. This curriculum starts off in kindergarten. And basically, gender ideology and sexual orientation is wrapped up in the part of the health curriculum. Now, parents in the state of Maryland can opt their children out of that. They hate that. Matter of fact, Carroll County was one of the counties that was leading the charge against that. So basically what they did was they created legislation to make its own standalone curriculum, and therefore the parents didn't have the right to opt their child out. Now, we made a ton of noise about this bill. It goes over to the Senate, and we were hoping the Senate would just simply put it in a drawer and kill it. The Senate took one step further. They completely rewrote the bill. It is a different bill, and basically what it says is all curriculum will be handled by the state board of education, which is not elected. And I've been preached at all session long about how Elon Musk is this unelected person making decisions for us federally. But in the state of Maryland, they don't care about that. They turned it over to an unelected board appointed by the governor. And then if the county doesn't implement exactly what they say, there's provisions in the law for the comptroller to fine them.
This is unbelievable. And honestly,
so Julie, I mean, what's the point of even having a local school board?
Right.
Annapolis
exactly.
dictates everything. Democrats, it's outrageous.
It's central planning.
But it is, and Delia, really quickly though, isn't it true that the reason they do this is because they know that parents are wildly object to this kind of stuff, and so if they put it, if it is the role of an elected official, those elected officials are more likely to respond to what voters want and to put controls on this. So then they turn it over to an unelected board, essentially, to protect people from parents who might vote against this kind of thing.
Well, we see these decisions made all the time, regulatory, where they'll turn over. Like we just had this deal with the California Clean Cars by Maryland regulatory. Maryland car dealers are not allowed to sell anything but 40% of all auto sales have to be EV sold, EV sales starting in September. The governor issued an executive order pushing that off 2 years. Now, that was never legislation that was passed. That was the legislation that tied us to a board in California, an unelected board there 3,000 miles away, and the rules were implemented by MDE. This is a real problem where the legislature doesn't want to, politicians,
right.
Constituents can push back on them. They like to turn it over to the administrative side of things because, let's face it, if a parent or something in this situation wanted to go punch back at at the school board there, that's like punching a balloon. It just pops right back out to its original shape.
And they can look back at the parents on open mic night. They can say, guys, we don't disagree with you, but our hands are tied by the state. There's nothing we can do. Oh, and so it's like, what's the point of having a local school board?
Exactly. And look, and Larry, I think this is really a problem because this was a completely different bill. Local school boards across the state didn't even have a chance to weigh in on this. Now, I do know that their association, they're all part of this one big association named MAMBA, Maryland Association Board of Educators. They came out in opposition for this, but they didn't really have a heads up on this. Like I said, this is a completely different bill. And in the final draft of the bill, it just cracked me up. They tried to move this thing through on a Saturday when there's no media in the chamber at all. This is like 4 o'clock a couple of days ago on a Saturday. And nobody had a heads up to this at all. They tried to move it through on a concurrence calendar where it was really just no debate, no chance to amend the bill at all.
Yeah. Everybody's saying that this is, the money behind the trans activists and everything and the trans agenda, and it's out-of-state money. I don't dispute that. But I just have a hunch. Maybe this is a brilliant move, Delegate Moore, a brilliant move from the homeschooling lobby. They've pushed this through because honestly, there's going to be such an explosion of homeschool parents in Maryland because of this.
Well, think about this. We passed through education reform like 5 years ago. It was called the Kerwin, the Blueprint to Excellence. We are dumping more money into education than we know what to do with at this point. I asked them to run the numbers. Extra payments into education in the state of Maryland, just in the state side, not counting the county side, it's about $1.5 billion over the last 3 years. And then it's every year. It's not concurrent. Every year there's about $1.5 billion more than what was in 2022. All this money going into education, Larry, Julie, you have to realize that homeschooling is at an all-time high in the state.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's a reason for it. All right. Listen, sadly, we do have to leave it there. Maryland Delegate Matt Morgan.
Awesome.
I appreciate you joining us very much, and keep up the good work. I know it's an uphill fight, but we'll keep giving you a voice here We Republicans in Maryland, we deserve, some kind of representation, and you're doing a good job for us. Thank you, sir.
Well, hey, I thank you for having all the Freedom Caucus members on your show this year. We're trying to fix this state. It is an uphill battle. We've had several big wins from stopping the condom vending machines for kiddies and stuff like that. We got a ton of, taxes taken back out of the budget. But it just cracks me up, Larry, Julie. This is the last day, constitutionally, the only thing that we're supposed to do in the state of Maryland is pass a balanced budget, and we still haven't done that yet.
Still don't have that. That's right.
Yeah.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Let's go straight to cut 13. This is what it sounded like in Long Island, New York, as history was made. Our hometown Washington Capitals and the greatest scorer in NHL history, our own Alex Ovechkin. Here's what it sounded like.
Try to force it to him if he's open. Here is Ovechkin. Shoots! He scores! He scores! Number 895!
Absolute chills. I watched this over and over and over again. Wayne Gretzky's speech, Ovechkin's speech. They stopped the game. They celebrated. By the way, that was on an away game. That was the New York Islanders fans screaming like that. Hockey fans are the classiest, except for Philadelphia Flyers fans, of course. But it really was something to behold. It gives you chills. Caps fans, though, you got to stop for a moment. Not only did Ovechkin just break the all-time scoring record, breaking the great one, Wayne Gretzky's record, he scored every single one of his goals wearing the Washington Capitals sweater.
That's
Gretzky
right.
Cannot say that. And he brought us a Stanley Cup. So it wasn't just about his own personal records and his personal glory. The fact that, and no one will forget the joy he had celebrating that Stanley Cup, where it seemed like he was drunk every night in Georgetown or on Capitol Hill with that cup, drinking beer out of it, ripping his clothes off that summer. It was amazing. Unbelievable. And what a great moment for DC sports.
Yeah, it's been a great moment for hockey. I mean, with Wayne Gretzky in the news as well. Hanging out with Cash Patel. And
the number one hockey fan in the Trump administration, man. Cash, and he's a hockey
he plays.
player, too.
He's good. Yes. He's good. So, yeah.
He went to the Caps game when he tied it, but then he traveled with Gretzky, said, hey, Cash, you want to come up to New York? And Cash is like, I got nothing better to do. Sure, let's go. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure he was on the job when he was up there, but that's pretty cool to see, too.
It is.
Just on a personal note, I'm born in Detroit, so we Michiganders, we think that, we're the best sports fans on the planet because we are. And it's a real cool thing. I reflected on this yesterday. The three top goal scorers in NHL history, Gordie Howe, Wayne Gretzky, Alex Ovechkin, incredible men, incredible players. And I've called each one of their teams my home team at various times.
Interesting.
Gordie Howe with the Detroit Red Wings.
I think Larry's the key here.
Wayne Gretzky with the LA Kings, and now Ovi with the Capitals. So
look at that.
You're welcome, America. It's 7:54.
Are you tired